Hey out there, welcome to the Flying Focus 26th Busiversary. I'm PC Peri, a co-founder of the Flying Focus Video Collective, which started in 1991.
And I'm Dan Handelman, and I've also been with Flying Focus since the beginning. 2017 marks 26 years since we started producing our show at Open Signal Portland Community Media. We produced our first shows during the so-called Gulf War, which PC also refers to as the massacre in the Middle East.
We've created hundreds of programs which feature speakers, visionaries, forums, street protests, and other information you don't always see covered by the corporate media.
Some of the topics we cover from a people's perspective include war and peace, police accountability, animal rights, economic, environmental, and social justice.
The Busiversary is our chance to show the viewers that we're just ordinary people making TV, and to tell you why we think the topics we're covering are important to everyone's lives.
We're going to share clips from 24 episodes of our weekly show, The Flying Focus Video Bus, produced between November 2016 and October 2017, which made up 13 unique programs.
For 10 of these shows, I either recorded or coached other people recording the video.
And PC is going to give you some contact information that will come up a few times during the show, so grab something to write with.
If you want to be part of what we're doing, call us at 503-239-7456 or 503-321-5051 or write us, ffbc@flyingfocus.org. Dan's going to get us started talking about 2 shows he did on nuclear issues.
I just want to say that the name of our group includes the word collective for a reason. While it is possible to record, edit, and publish shows by oneself, there's no way we could have come this far without relying on one another. This past year, in addition to helping edit all 13 shows, I produced 5 shows myself, but I only recorded 3 of them. These first 2 focused on the annual Hiroshima Day Memorial events held in 2016 and 2017, coordinated by Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility. The clips we'll be seeing first are from 2016, a show subtitled Toward a Nuclear-Free Future, and they include words from Dr. Hideko Snyder. Dr. Snyder was a child in Hiroshima when the bomb dropped there, and she described how her ordinary life became quickly and horrifyingly interrupted. Hosting the event was Ling Longfellow, who you'll see later on the Busiversary as a speaker on a different show. Unit Suzu, a taiko company which includes a drummer originally from Hiroshima, played several pieces. The one seen here was an echo of the nuclear meltdown in Fukushima. Oregon PSR Executive Director Kelly Campbell called for action, and local performance artist Chizao Hata led the audience in an interactive poem.
This site where we stand, the Japanese-American Historical Plaza, is one of our major projects along with the Oregon UK Legacy Center. But this plaza is a sacred place. It's a memorial where we remember history so that it will never be forgotten.
My mother had to leave. And she was in the center of town. My best friend, Miyoshi, went right away to her favorite grandma's house near the center. The girl who was my best friend all the years I was at Savy Academy. Miyoshi was crushed to death. My mother never came home.
I first really became aware of the dangers of nuclear weapons after September 11th, when I helped start a group of 9/11 family members that were working for peace and justice. And one of the first groups that reached out to us were Hibakusha from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They sent a delegation from Japan to New York to meet with us and to share their stories of transforming their pain and their grief into work for peace and justice. And it made an enormous impression on me that these people, who had suffered the most unimaginable way from the bombs dropped by the U.S., were able to empathize with American 9/11 families and encourage us to take up their struggle for peace and justice.
They were murdered, countless of innocent ones. Their deaths were once again televised
social media moments, racism in America, Black Lives Matter. So we're saying they are not alone. They are not alone.
The 2017 Hiroshima Memorial was shorter than usual, in part because the participants headed away at the end to see a performance piece, which we were not able to record, Suspended Moment, that took place not far from the waterfront. The artists involved, Yukio Kawano and Alison Cobb, performed a spoken word piece in English and Japanese during the memorial that included parts of a speech by President Obama, the first U.S. president to visit Hiroshima since the bombs dropped there in 1945. Also in these clips, you will see hosts Pola Catalani and Portland Tycho. Keynote speaker Sean Tenney of Oregon PSR explained the event's title, From Despair to Hope, by pointing out the deadly legacy of nuclear weapons being somewhat offset by a 2017 UN treaty to ban them.
Those very winds and waves of war, of reconciliation, and just a few years ago, the wreckage of Fukushima's nuclear meltdown. So, abuelos y abuelitos, our anchor aunties and grumpy grandpas, I know you're back there. Dear parents and our lovely children, let's hold in our hearts this grand circulatory system of sorrow and of joy that is our lives.
There are currently more than 15,000 nuclear weapons around the globe, mostly in the hands of 9 nuclear-armed nations. We're seeing heightened tensions around nuclear weapons, as anyone who's been reading the news recently sees the sort of saber-rattling and posturing on behalf of the Trump administration and North Korea. We also acknowledge the despair of Hanford in our own region. It's a prime example of how nuclear weapons kill whether they're used or not. They kill during the process of production. They kill during the process of enrichment. So in Africa, Aboriginal and Indigenous communities in Australia and Canada, where uranium is mined, suffer disproportionately the impacts of nuclear weapons production. Another thing that gives us real hope, and actually not only hope but a legal recourse to ban nuclear weapons, is the recent United Nations ban treaty on nuclear weapons. So it acknowledges that in the same way that we consider chemical weapons or biological weapons to be morally unacceptable, the United Nations has now declared that they consider nuclear weapons to be in that same category.
This project started in 2011 when I made a sculpture of the little boy bomb dropped on Hiroshima, the city where I grew up. I used the silk kimonos of my grandmother and sew them together with my hair, melding the DNA of generations of atomic bomb survivors.
We look directly at each other.
我々はお互いをまっすぐ見る。
We can look.
我々は見ることができる。
We look.
我々は見る。
我々は恐怖から逃れる。We escape fear.
Hi, PC here again. I produced 2 programs this year. The first one was one I taped in Portland in 2016. Kevin Kumashiro came to the Northwest Teachers for Social Justice Conference to help us change the way we think about the education narrative. He introduced 3 points reflecting his analysis, which you'll see in the clips. It gets you out of the simplistic way of thinking and enables a broader way of analyzing not just education, but all the systems confronting us. This is one of several dozen shows we have streaming online at flyingfocus.org, or you can find it at youtube.com/flyingfocusshows.
We often fixate on only one explanation. When we do that, we are not getting at the full picture, and therefore we cannot come up with a good solution. A high-tech industry, for example, that fuels gentrification by offering free buses between high-cost neighborhoods and the Silicon Valley, right? On actually public roads, using public bus stops, and so on, right? Corporations can fuel gentrification. This reminds me of a fantastic book by Naomi Klein called This Changes Everything, right? Which argues that climate change is not about individuals going bad. Climate change is actually because of capitalism and corporations running amok. What I would argue is that when we individualize the problem, we're actually masking what's really going on. And what I'm trying to point to is the difference between the rhetoric and the reality. The difference between, for example, what we say is the purpose of education and what is actually the function. We often talk about how the purpose of education is equal educational opportunity, is leveling the playing field, is preparing everyone to succeed. But what we have to remind ourselves of is that public education in this country was never actually created for everyone. It was created for the most elite, and as we were forced to integrate more and more students, we just came up with more and more ways to divide and sort them. The purpose of education might be equal educational opportunity, but the function has historically been to socialize and sort. This is how mass schooling works in nations around the world, right? So our job isn't to try to reclaim some mythical past. Our job is to dive into that contradiction, is to insist that we work that contradiction to see whether the possibilities for education can come to life. The possibilities that maybe we haven't even yet realized, the possibilities that we haven't even yet dreamt of, can they come to life? And shouldn't they come to life with the social movements that we build?
We have Barb Greene with us now, editor extraordinaire and producer at the Flying Focus Video Collective. And what problems did you have editing? Oh, you were doing the one on...
I was doing the one on dirty energy, dirty money.
Right.
The panel of climate or environmental activists talking about how big oil and their allies routinely hijack the legislative system in Oregon.
And that was recorded in Beaverton in a two-part show.
Right, right. And they followed, there were several activists talking on this panel, and they followed the Clean Fuels Bill through the Oregon legislature and showed how the oil companies tried to shut it down.
They did their best, but not good enough.
Yeah, this time.
Thanks.
So let's take a look.
And the first step was campaign donations. And this is the Oregon Fuels Association and who they gave money to. So Oregon Fuels Association, like the Western States Petroleum Association, is an industry group made up of oil groups, of oil companies, but this group gives to legislators and candidates. And you can see here they give to Democrats, like Representative Jeff Barker, Representative Deborah Boone. They give to Republicans like Senator Bill Hansel or Representative Jolie Parrish. They gave one $10,000 donation to Senator Bruce Starr, who was running for re-election in 2014. When we take him out of the equation, we'll move to the next slide. You can see a closer look of who they're giving to. Their average contributions are around $1,000 to $2,000. So they give campaign contributions. They do secret attack ads too. And you can see some examples here. There's a group called the Oregon Capitol Watch Foundation. And their leader, their executive director, is a guy named Jeff Crope, who was the executive director of the Koch brothers political arm in Oregon until, I think, 2013. And now he's here at the OCWF. So a lot of the similar ideological background from the Koch brothers to OCWF. What they did was they sent mail pieces to the districts of legislators that were vulnerable and might not be reelected, and they tried to make the case that the legislators, by voting for an environmental bill, were doing something bad for their for people in their district. And then step 3 is they hired a lot of lobbyists, and these are some of the top groups. So the top 10 groups opposed to the Clean Fuels Bill spent $2.2 million hiring lobbyists to go defeat the Clean Fuels Bill. They actually outspent proponents of the Clean Fuels Bill 10 to 1. So even though 70% of Oregonians wanted the clean fuels bill, their interests were outspent in the legislature 10-1. And if you actually go to the next slide here, you can see how much they're paying for lobbyists too. So Western States Petroleum Association, again that's an industry group for oil companies, pays $643,000 for lobbyists.
We have Barb in the seat again. We're talking about Amy Goodman. She was here in Portland, specifically Beaverton, but I recorded it and you edited it, produced the show. Mm-hmm. How did it go?
It went well. She's an inspiring speaker.
Right.
She's the host of Democracy Now! And she's written a lot of books. She was here talking about her most recent book, which she co-wrote with Dennis Moynihan.
Right. He was here.
He was here.
All right.
Mm-hmm. But in this clip, we have Amy Goodman talking about the importance of independent media.
I think the media can be the greatest force for peace on earth. Instead, all too often, it's wielded as a weapon of war, which is why we have to take the media back. I think the mainstream media is a misnomer, because I do believe that those who care about war and peace, those who care about the growing inequality in this country, those who care about racial and economic injustice, those who care about climate change, the fate of the planet, are not a fringe minority, not even a silent majority, but the silenced majority, silenced by the corporate media, which is why we have to take it back. This idea of Pacifica Radio and all that it represented, the idea that when we come to know each other, that is the beginning of peace. We need a media when we cover war that's not brought to us by the weapons manufacturers, when we cover healthcare not brought to us by the insurance industry and big pharma, when we cover climate change not brought to us by the oil, the gas, the coal, the nuclear companies. We need a media that is truly independent. The movements that matter. From the mass resistance the day after President Trump took office, right? A lot was made of the fact that his inaugural crowd was not as big as President Obama's first inaugural crowd. I mean, like, it's only 10% of it, right? He had 180,000 people, which, by the way, was a respectable size. Obama was like 1.8 million. And this so infuriated President Trump that he ended up saying he had the largest crowd, like, in history. Ludicrous. We could see the pictures. But it sort of obscured what happened just the next day on January 21st. In the same place, in the same year, 3 times the crowd of his inauguration the day before came out, led by women saying no.
Charles Eisenstein is our next person to cover. It was at the First Unitarian Church, Portland, Oregon. And Barb, what did you think of how he was giving his message? Did he seem...
He seemed very inspiring to me.
That's it.
So Charles Eisenstein, he's a visionary, an author, and he sees that our old way of dominating nature and each other is coming to an end. We're sort of between stories, as he puts it, and we're coming to a story of interbeing, interconnectedness, cooperation, and very inspiring, especially in these times with the current administration that doesn't seem like that's possible, but he gives hope.
Our neighbor at State College, Pennsylvania, where I used to live, he was a musician, and he was leaving a gig, and he saw a man get punched by a gang of 4 fraternities, men, and knocked out. And this man was like knocked out and lying on the street. And then a cop came up and arrested the man. And my neighbor said, "Hey, that guy just got assaulted. You know, you shouldn't arrest him." And the cop's like, "Can you tell me how to do my job?" And that, like, my neighbor had a story about the police and who they are and what their role is. And that maybe didn't disintegrate that story, but it damaged that story. Going into my senior year at Yale University, I was arrested and put into jail for 2 days for possession of marijuana. And it was a family disgrace. My mother cried when I told her, first person in our highly educated family to go to jail. And, up until then, I believed that people in jail were bad people. You know, they did something wrong, and they probably deserved to be in jail, you know, with maybe a few unfortunate exceptions, but, you know, that's where the bad people were. Like, I just kind of naively just bought into that as if it were reality itself and not a belief. But when I was in jail, like, I met really interesting people. And the men there, they had children. They wanted to show me the pictures of their children. They were acting just like people do outside of jail, more or less. And I realized that they were almost kind of there by accident. You know, like in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they have their problems. They were humorous. They were good. They had goodwill for us. They, you know, knew instantly what we were. You know, a couple of rich white hippie kids. You know, they were all white too. This was Idaho. You know, very different social class. I'm like, boy, that just shattered my story. I never saw the world the same after that.
Okay, so that's it for part 1 of the 26th Busiversary. I'm Barb Greene of Flying Focus Video Collective.
And I'm still PC Peri. To get involved and support Flying Focus in any way, you can call us at 503-239-7456. You can find show times at 503-321-5051. You can also write us at ffbc@flyingfocus.org.
Flying Focus is a nonprofit group made up of volunteers. We're able to keep going because people send donations, including for copies of our videos on DVD or online.
If you can be part of this effort to voice the voiceless, write down or contact information.
It's important to know that anybody can make TV. We want to recognize the crew behind the scenes today. We have Moz, Jim, Tom, Steve, Alan, and Daniel.
Open Signal, which has been known as Portland Cable Access and Portland Community Media, is here because the public owns the airwaves. We've called OS/PCM our home for over 26 years. You can be part of our efforts to democratize TV.
Thanks for watching, and tune in next week at the same time for part 2.